I am joined today by a wonderful bass player who hails from South Australia and has put together a group of musicians who have taken arranging and performing classic songs to a whole other level. It's Randy Halsey with Backstage Pass Radio, and I hope you all are tuning in today happy and healthy. I am going to take you down under today to talk to one of the hottest cover bands on the planet. Their rendition of classic songs has yielded them millions of videos on YouTube, and they are quickly approaching 1 million subscribers. The project is called Hindley Street Country Club, so stick around, and I will talk to the founder and the king of the four-string, Mr. Con Delo, in 3, 2, 1.
This is Backstage Pass Radio, the podcast that's designed for the music junkie with a thirst for musical knowledge. Hi, this is Adam Gordon, and I want to thank you all for joining us today. Make sure you like, subscribe, and turn alerts on for this and all upcoming podcasts. And now, here's your host of Backstage Pass Radio, Randy Halsey.
I am here with Con Delo. Con, how are you, man? It's good to see you.
Hey, Randy, how are you? And hi to everyone in America and all around the world that's listening to your awesome podcast.
I'm doing great, man, and thanks so much for joining me. I know that we are in a big time difference here. I think, 16 and a half hours is the time difference. So it's 6:30 Houston time, 6:30 p.m. Houston time, and 11 o'clock a.m. the following day in Australia where you are, right? So it's Wednesday here in Texas and Thursday where you are, right?
Indeed.
Well, I wanted to talk to you a little bit, of course, about the project, and I wanted to get to know a little bit more about you. And I know the listeners who are familiar with the project, of course, want to know more about it and yourself. But were you born and raised there in Adelaide, or was it another part of Australia that you were born and raised in?
No, I was born and raised in Australia, in Adelaide, and I come from a Macedonian father and a Greek mother. So my lineage is continental Europe.
I was wondering where the name Delo originated from, right? Was the family musical? Did you come from a musical family? Did you have siblings that were musicians, or did this just happen organically for you, like somewhere down the line growing up?
There was no one in my family that were musical per se in the sense of musicians, but when you grow up in European culture, music is up there with food and love and family, and it's ingrained in what we are. So I think I was the one that took the mantle of the family to actually perform and play. But to say that any of them were musical, no.
Were they lovers or intakers, just casual music fans at all, or was music just not a big part of them?
No, music was huge in our house. You know, my father used to play all those great Dion records, and I remember Mum having, Motown stuff going on, and there was always music in the house. Whenever Mum was cleaning, there was music going on, or Dad would have it in the radio in the car. And then you have the family get-togethers, and there's always music going on. So it's intrinsically, it's formed part of how I hear and produce and arrange music. A lot of that. Sure. So them having music in the house certainly shaped a lot of what I've become. Yeah. Certainly.
You dropped some names there, which is kind of cool. So it sounds like there was a big influence on music that was coming out of the United States. You talked about, Motown and things like that, right? Dion. Was that the case?
I think anyone in modern society, in modern musical society, has to acquiesce to the fact that 99% of what you grow up listening to in any genre has come from the United States. Okay. It was predominantly what was on our airwaves. Of course, there's Australian music. I'm talking Western style music, yes. Of course. Okay. But yeah, I think the impact of the black soul and R&B and the Motown, for me personally, had the greatest influence, even more than the cultural music that I grew up on. And the reason that it had that impact was because it was just fantastic, and it still is fantastic.
I agree with you 100%. We always say here we're down with the Motown sound, right? And it's such great music, and it's music that that you listen to it in the 60s, 70s, 80s. It just never gets old, man. And it's always it's always a feel-good thing when you can listen to some good R&B, some good groove, and I think you would concur there, right?
That's right. That's really true too. I'll tell you why, Randy, because if you listen to a lot of mainland European music that was very, orchestrally based, for me anyway, not right, wrong, or indifferent, it's almost a little bit mathematical and clinical, whereas what you said earlier is exactly right. The Motown stuff, it felt good. It was never overplayed, and it was more about a groove and a feeling than it was about it being mathematical. Yeah. And I think that's why it will always resonate with people.
I agree with you. Do you remember when you got your first instrument and what instrument it was, Con?
My dad somehow got his hands on a pair of drumsticks, and he brought them home from work or something like that. And I remember laying the pillows out, like couch pillows on the floor, and then watching TV and the music shows and playing along to those tunes as a drummer on those pillows. That was the beginning.
So that were like your toms there, right?
Yeah. Snare and stuff. Yeah,
sure.
I started on drums.
Well, I think that all parents who would want their kid to learn drums would probably prefer that you practice on pillows, right? Would you agree to that?
all that ruckus, cacophony of sound.
Well, what you can't see in my studio, down in that side of my studio, I'm not a drummer, but I did pick up an electric kit, an Alesis kit, and I always wanted to learn to play. And people come into the studio and rehearse and play. And I thought, okay, this is going to be the best of both worlds, because not only can I kind of learn to play the drums, but I can put on the headphones and mute myself where only I can hear it and I don't disturb anybody else in the house, right? Yeah.
And it'll probably keep your marriage together too in the long run.
Well, I say 37 years later, I don't think I can run Terry off now at this stage, but I don't know, no. I think it's probably possible if I work hard at it. Well, who influenced you? You talked a little bit about Motown, but who was influencing you as a formidable teenager? We're hitting that teenage stride. We're really getting we're getting girl crazy around that time and falling in love. And we're about the same age, I believe, right? So I'm just curious, who was doing it for you when you were a young teenager? What bands were you gravitating to back then?
Earth, Wind and Fire, Toto, Al Jarreau, that whole West Coast LA sound, the 78 to 84, that period, Boss Gags, George Benson, that's what shaped my playing. That's all I listened to. Luther Vandross, all that really cool soul and groovy stuff.
A very eclectic mix of different types of music for you then.
Amongst those names, the white artists that I'm mentioning, they're still soul. They're blue-eyed soul. So its roots were still in Black American music, no doubt. What
bands do you feel like you're into these days? Is there, I don't know that anybody, as a musician myself, I don't know who's really influencing me. I have some really cool favorites right now, but is there a couple of bands that kind of stick out to you that you're really gravitating to these days?
You know that saying, everything that's old is new again?
Yes. Yes. Yeah,
I'm listening to all the same people still. I'd like to expand my horizons, and there's been a few artists over the last 20 years that I've gone, that's, and one of those is an independent guy out of England called Lewis Taylor.
Okay.
That's just fantastic. And it's really something special. But outside of him, Randy, I think I'm so ensconced in what's happening with HSCC, and I'm in that genre and in that era,
of course,
that I'm always searching for tunes for us to record that somehow, not necessarily mimic, but somehow have that same taste and same flavor. So, I'll always love, Steely Dan, any musician worth his salt does, but I can't really say there's a lot out currently that I go, wow. But I have been getting lately into some of the Southern rock stuff, I'm still an awesome fan of the Doobies. That goes without saying,
Yep.
And for me, stuff like Tedeschi Trucks and a lot of that Southern rock, Little Feat, and I've been listening to a lot more of that lately, because that's again blue-eyed soul. That's where I go.
I agree with you. And I've always said this kind of tongue in cheek that I turned off the radio in like 1989 and I didn't turn it on for years afterwards. And here's what happened to me, Con, is I went out as a solo artist somewhere around 2016. And as a solo guy, acoustic singer, songwriter guy then, I said, you're going to have to play more than the old rock classics. You're going to have to know a little country. You're going to have to mix it up a little bit. So I was kind of forced to step outside of my comfort zone, which I'm an old classic rock guy, right? 70s, 80s, classic rock, like that was my thing. And so I was forced to go out and learn some Americana stuff, some different things to kind of appeal to all different people. But kind of like you, I think we're kind of stuck with what we love, and that's kind of where we are, right?
Yeah, but that's also endemic, Randy, because of what you said earlier. You turned the radio off in 1989. Nothing's come through of late that's worth turning the radio on for.
Yeah,
and that is why you have a situation for our genre and our demographic. While the big record companies are paying hundreds and millions of dollars for the catalogs of Paul Simon, of Sting, of Fleetwood Mac, of the Eagles, the Doobies, and stuff today, it just doesn't hold up. It literally just doesn't hold up because the kids have got an attention span of, if you don't hit them in the chorus in the first 30 seconds, they're swiping. You're gone. The body of work has no time to build, has no time to tell the story. I could be wrong, and I probably am wrong.
I tend to agree with you. I often told my kids as they were growing up with some of the music that they were listening to, I said, 20 years from now, that stuff, you will not hear that on the radio, but I promise you that you will hear Kashmir by Led Zeppelin for the rest of your 100%. Life on the radio. Like there's no two ways around that.
There's another fantastic example. Led Zeppelin, you cannot, as a musician, be not affected by what some of the stuff that they've played. And they, by their own admission, have taken a lot of their influences from Black American blues.
Very much so.
So again, we're both talking about an artist that, someone like Led Zeppelin, we're talking about an artist or a band that not only have they been influential on pop culture, but they've been influential to musicians.
Of course.
So, what a great situation for those guys, that the public love you, and then you have the respect of your musical peers. I mean, that's a gift.
Well, they were hugely influenced by Robert Johnson and what he was doing with the blues, right? So,
yeah, correct.
Well, I think sometime around, and you correct me if my dates are off, Con, okay? Sometime around 2017, you started a project called the Hindley Street Country Club. Talk to the listeners a little bit about what this project is all about. Give us the 50,000-foot view, and then we'll dive in a little bit deeper on HSCC, okay?
In a nutshell, November of 17, we went in there and just started recording some songs that I liked, that I arranged, and I brought the people in for. And we recorded them. We dumped them onto YouTube, and we did one song, and it was fun. It was a bit of fun. Then we did another one, and it went on for 4, 5, 6 weeks, and there was nothing really to write home about. They were just recording some tunes. And then it became a bit of we just all got together. We just kept on doing it. And so we'd record a couple of tunes in a day, which means we wouldn't have to record again, for a couple of weeks or whatever, or we record 2 tunes a day over 2 days. And the process is very quick. It's all over within 3 or 4 hours. And people think that we're there for days and rehearsing and getting everything. No, it happens very, very quickly because the guys, most of the guys involved can play,
Mm-hmm.
So we just kept on doing it. And I've not missed a release now, Randy, with HSCC since November of 2017. I've not missed a Friday in all that time. Come
That's
COVID,
awesome.
Come whatever, I've not missed a Friday.
That's
in
awesome.
all of that time.
And it's paid off for you. Look where the project is now. How great is that?
Yeah, the project has become not what I expected it to be. But the beauty of that, is, you get to our age, you kind of know where things are going because you kind of been there, done that, seen it.
Of course.
And now this just, it's just taken everyone by surprise with the scope. And so we just kept on releasing tunes, and then we released just the two of us, an arrangement I did of the Bill Withers Grover Washington song. Mm-hmm. And I think it just sat there for a month or two, I think, just innocuously. And then Bill Withers sadly passed away. And then people went down the rabbit hole looking for Bill Withers tunes. And then that version just went mad. And then literally people started liking some of our newer stuff, and they just kept on watching and kept on watching. And then, brother, all I can say is it just went boom.
It sounds like it's about being in the right place at the right time, Con. And it sounds like with the Bill Withers piece, it sounds like might have been what happened a little bit, right?
Well, yeah, but it's also, I'm a firm believer too that, hard work and luck are only two of the ingredients of success. That third bit of success is being ready.
Absolutely. 100%.
And it is 100%. I refuse to accept any other answer or opinion. For me, anyway, it was HSCC has been an absolute gift from God, because it's touched so many people during an awful time during the pandemic. It's just touched and reached a lot of people in a very, very positive fashion. And that's evident because, I get countless emails and countless messages saying how HSCC has helped them relive, the soundtrack of their youth. And it really, we've gone from, in May of 21, I think, May, 4 years later, we're at 100,000 subscribers and 100 million views. And people think, the people that are doing their own projects similar to this, you would think after 100,000 subscribers and 100 million views that your phone rings off the hook with offers. That's not the case. That's not the case at all. But what does happen when you start getting into that 500,000 subscribers and 500 million views, well, yeah, then the phone really starts to ring.
Yeah. Well, I know there's all kinds of demographics. There's people that listen to this show, Backstage Pass Radio, around the world. The age groups vary, of course. Musical taste varies. Some are musicians, some are not musicians, right? But sitting in the musician's seat, it's interesting that you mentioned earlier, you kind of go in on a Friday with a group of musicians and you record. And it's a straightforward process for the most part. But your stuff, and this is speaking from a musician, and I didn't even think to ask you this question until you mentioned it, but it sounds so polished, Con, like you could have been in the studio for days. And I think it's a testament to the caliber of musician that you're pulling in there in Adelaide, right? I mean, these are top-notch people that can come in and kick these songs in the ass and get in and out of that studio and still sound like, maybe you did 1,000 takes and just got it perfect, but I mean, they sound so polished on the internet. So kudos for that. Right?
What it is that from when HSCC started to where it is now, a lot of the faces that, because I bring in different people all the time, a lot of the faces that were around, say, 3 years ago are not around anymore because they just weren't where we needed them to be. The last 2 or 3 years especially they're real good players. We've all done a ton of studio, a ton of session work, and you can tell because whatever you see online, we generally, the way that it works is that I say to the guys, here's the 2 tunes or 3 tunes for the day. They learn them. Then I tell them, once you've learned it, that's great at home. Then when you come to the studio, forget about it. Then I say, listen, we know how it goes. I want to change this here. I want to put a chord substitution here. Or I want to change the arrangement here. Or I want to add a solo here or take something out. And it's all done on the fly. We run the tune maybe twice, 3 times, and then we press record. Okay. And then we do 2 or 3 takes, and that's the best take. And then we move on to the next one. So I think it was only about a month ago, we knocked out 4 tunes or 5 tunes in 6 hours worth of content. And for the musicians out there that know, when you're recording live like that, Randy, as you know, there's nowhere to hide. You've got to know your stuff. You've got to know your notes. If you make a mistake, start again, back to the top. So they're good players. There's not a whole lot of stuff going on that people don't, like a lot of smoke and mirrors and stuff. It's not like that. And if a proper musician can listen to it and also but hear it, not just listen to it, they'll go, yeah, that's the real deal there or whatever. Now, of course, by the time it comes out of your amp or the drums and the mics and everything and it goes into the desk, of course it's going to sound cleaner because it's not, you're actually going through digital equipment. In principle, we know what you're saying. Yeah, we're fortunate. It's a very polished act. And our engineer, who's based in America, his name's Pete Savard, just a a fantastic engineer. Really, really something special. So we record the tunes. It's all done through, we've got a really fantastic arrangement and endorsement with Shaw microphones. They've given us just so much stuff to record. And then we record it. Within an hour after the session finishes, is Jordan, my singer, but also who does the recording on the day. He's already got it emailed off to Pete in New York. Pete comes back to me with a rough mix. Then I produce it accordingly, like I've done from the get-go. And what you get is what you get. And for people that have heard our older stuff to our newer stuff, you can hear the gulf. It's from stuff we recorded, when we first started. To me, it always felt a little bit template-like. Whereas now we've got a proper world-class engineer engineering it. And that's why sonically you can really, really hear the difference, and you're much more able to hear the nuances in what we're doing. It's all done very, very quickly. We actually flew Pete out from New York to be involved in some of our sessions to actually see how it goes down. He's playing guitar on a couple of tracks as of late. But even he said to me, he says, man, he said, I knew you guys were quick and I knew you guys were good. He said, but until I actually came all the way from halfway across the world to see it, I would never have believed it.
Well, the studio that you guys say you've recorded some of the latest stuff in, is that a home studio or is that a regular a studio that you go to?
That's actually a great question. Normally, when we record, Randy, the way that we're set up, because with our microphones, again, I say I've got to give Shaw a big, big plug. We record it into an Apple Mac. We can actually come into anyone's lounge room, or you think you guys call it living room, into a living room. We can come into your garage. We can come into wherever. And we can record. We don't need monitors. We don't need a PA system. It's all done with in-ears. We come in there and record. We dump it onto the Mac and we're off. That is a studio. That's called the House of SAP, S-A-P, in Adelaide. Okay. And a guy by the name of Reno Cafone runs that place. And it's just sonically, it's just a great space. So we've just been recording there lately. Like soon we're going to be recording some more tunes back in one of our favourite cafes. We're very fortunate. So when we eventually hit the road into America, we're not going to be stopping our recording. We're actually going to be recording on the road. We could do it in a hotel lobby.
That's awesome, yeah.
We could do it in a hotel room. So
very cool. Well, that would be a cool little take, to have it's kind of like chronicling your journey across the world, right? Recording in different places all the time and not just Adelaide all the time. I think that would be cool.
Absolutely correct. One of our biggest markets is obviously it's America. It accounts for, I think, 18 or 20% of our global market. But of that, Texas is our, is it first or second? One of them biggest markets in America.
Go Texas.
I kind of understand why for some of the other interviews that I've given. What I'm finding, Texans just have a real, genuine appreciation for music.
There's
not
a lot
to
of
say
good,
that anyone else doesn't, but it just seems to be a lot of our fans come from Texas.
Well, there's a lot of good music here, and it's very diverse. It's very diverse. Talk about the name, how HSCC, how you came up with the name.
Okay, so Hindley Street in Adelaide is a street where all of us used to do a lot of gigs back in the 80s. And it is the nastiest, dirtiest, filthiest street. Full of, back then it was always fighting, there was drugs and all manner of vice. So because we used to do a lot of our gigs then, we'd be there till 3 or 4 in the morning doing shows. It was anything but a country club. So it's a play on words. It's like saying, the Sahara Desert Yacht Club,
right?
Or
sure.
It's just a play on words.
Of course.
It's anything but a country club.
Yeah, right. Okay. That's interesting.
One of the best things about it is when I named the band or the project, I was confident that no matter, trillions and trillions of names you can put into the internet, there will only ever be one Hindley Street Country Club.
Of course.
It's the only one.
And that's important, to be unique and to be to not be lumped in with 18 other projects with the same name, right? Which one are you, Con? Oh, well, there's only one, I don't have to fight over who we are. That's right. Well, why is it important to you? We talk about the class of musician that you guys are, right? Why is it important to you to cover songs versus that of writing and recording material that you guys would call your own? And I'm sure I'm the 8,000th person that's asked you that question, right? And it's not a slight. I love cover music. I love tribute music, some of the greatest musicians in the world. But I'm curious kind of your thought process around, will Hindley Street always be that cover band or that kind of tribute project to the music of our times, or will you write your own stuff, right?
You've now asked that question for the 8,000th and first time.
Right.
I'm a big proponent of stay in your lane. If people stay in their lanes, there will be no accidents. It is just my calling, or whatever it is. This is my lane to do reimagined versions of songs that have touched me or felt me, that I've felt something for growing up or even currently. That is my lane. Most people in my situation with such a massive subscriber base and massive viewership, I could write an original tune, so to speak. Not that that's an easy thing to do. Write an original tune, and I could say, hey, everyone, we're about to release our first original tune. And I'm pretty sure we'd get into the million views very, very quickly. And if I was to sell it on iTunes for like a buck a track or whatever, and there'd be some money to be made. But that is then me parlaying something into something that wasn't its intention.
Of course.
There,
100%.
I'm now driving out of my lane, and that's when accidents are going to happen.
Yeah, very, very nicely said. And it sounds to me like this was never a project to recognize an income. This was for the sheer love of doing music with other wonderful, talented musicians. It was all for the love of music, right, Con?
That is 100% correct. And you'll see other projects that have happened as a result of HSCC. And the motivation is not the integrity. The motivation is not the music. The motivation is not the sharing of music and the sharing of stories and the sharing of brotherhood and camaraderie. It's not. It's purely designed to make money. It will never work.
Yeah.
Because that isn't what it was intended to do. And so if all the people that have been involved in HSCC that have come and gone, it's always been like a floating roster of, let's call it, of singers or musicians, because I like certain people can sing certain songs in a better fashion. Certain players play certain styles better than others. And I bring people in, but some of the faces and names that were involved are no longer with HSCC because it's not their journey.
Of course.
It's not what they're supposed to be doing. And most of my guys like Danny, my lead singer, Brad, my drummer, Dave Ross, my keyboard player, who also Kat, the singer, and Jordan, who's a bit younger. But the rest of us, we've done covers our whole life all around the world. And for me, this was the culmination of doing the songs that I want to do, reimagining them, changing their grooves, giving them the HSCC muscle that we call it, and just doing songs that we like and not trying to reinvent the wheel. There's a reason why Led Zeppelin is Led Zeppelin, and there's a reason why the Doobie Brothers are the Doobie Brothers, and so on and so on. It's because that is their lane.
Yes.
Their lane was to write music, and for every massive star we hear that's made millions of dollars out of it, 99% more that never did. And I wasn't prepared to take that punt and start writing original music, to hit the road and be sleeping in people's couches. And yes. No, thank you. No, thank you.
And I totally 100% respect that and can understand why and where you're coming from, because kind of like Backstage Pass Radio doesn't have near millions, hundreds of millions of listeners, but for a podcast I do very well. But it was really started for two reasons, and this was my lane. I'm a musician, so I wanted to do two things. Number one, I wanted to expose my peers that play around here locally. In other words, give them a platform to tell people about what they have going on. The second part of it is I'm a music junkie myself. I want to know the stories behind the songs. I get inside the songs. I want to know about the artists, where they record, all of the things that most people find boring, right? I find it very interesting.
Absolutely.
And money was never a third thing of why I started this. I could care less about making a dime from this, but it was just the love of hearing the stories really is where Backstage Pass came from, right?
Let me just say, digress a sec, that's a great name.
Thank you.
Backstage is a great name.
Thank you.
Look at someone like Rick Beato, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So there's a guy who's obviously a trained professional musician.
Of course.
He knows exactly what he's talking about. No one is going to tell me he sat downstairs in his studio one night and thought, you know what, I'm going to go online, I'm going to critique some songs and talk about the songs and how great they are, and then I'm going to become Rick Beato.
No.
Rick Beato is huge. He's massive, and people listen to the man.
Yep.
Because everything he does, of course, he's there, you know, going to be trying to monetize what he's doing now, but he's turned that into a business because he remained true. He remained. He had integrity with what he was doing.
Yes.
But again, and that gets back to what I'm saying. If that is his lane.
Yes.
That is his lane.
Yeah.
This is your lane. This is my lane. All the wonderful people that are listening to this podcast, and when they get to a certain age, like you touched on earlier, you start to understand really what staying in your lane is.
Of course you do. Well,
I think you have to acquiesce or bend over and not fulfill your dreams. The trick is just to realize that there's a reason that you're on your path.
And I think the common denominator is the love for what you're doing. And I think you'll agree with me, being a guitarist, that you can't just go to the music store and buy a guitar and say, I want to learn the guitar and get past the whole callousing the fingers. You have to first want to love the instrument and the music in order to put the time in to play. If there's no love, there's no learning the guitar. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And it's funny you say that. Look at guys like yourself, and and I'm sure like a litany of musicians that are listening. So I'm looking at your screen, and the public can't see it, but I can see three or four or five acoustics, a couple of electrics, and all of that kind of stuff. But most people, and I reckon I've got 12 or 13 bass guitars, Randy. I'm always playing the same one.
Yeah.
And all of your listeners out there, we've all got that go-to instrument.
Of course.
That's because that instrument was what we're supposed to be playing.
Yes.
We're called to that instrument. We're called to that piece of wood with strings on it or whatever, or set of drums or whatever, that keyboard. We're called to that instrument. And it's the same way we're called to play music. Not necessarily to make a living out of it, but you're called in a certain way to do the things that you do.
But Con, do me a favor and set the record straight for my wife, Terry, and tell her one guitar, you can't just have one because they all sound different. When I tell her, she doesn't believe me. So please just say what I just said.
All you got to say is, I've got 6 or 7 guitars, honey, and you may not understand, but they all sound different. Unlike you, I only want one wife because that's the sound I want to hear.
There you go. I've never heard it put that way. Thank you.
There you go.
This whole interview is worth that piece right there, Con. I appreciate that. I don't know if it was the first song. It was one of the original ones, but what was the first? Was it the Bill Withers tune that was the first one that HSCC ever recorded, or was that one of the early ones? What was the first song ever?
Remember when I said earlier, I've not missed a week since November 17? That was about a good, 15, 16 months in. Things were just plodding along, and we were getting, musicians saying, oh, this is good, and rah, but that was the one that broke it.
Why was it that song? Why was it not something else, right? Was there something that drew you to that song to be the first one?
No, well, I didn't really plan on it being the first one. I've picked every single song that HSCC has ever done from the get-go. I've picked all of those songs, and that one was a case of it was different enough to get people's attention, but ultimately the passing of Bill Withers. But because it was played well and performed well, it was enough for people to think, well, this is good enough for me to keep on. What else have these guys got? That's pretty much how I see it.
I got you.
And it's a song I played 6 nights a week growing up,
of course,
in pubs and in clubs. And I just wanted to do a different arrangement of it that wasn't as, because the original's just fantastic is what it is.
Yeah.
And we just gave it a bit more of laid it back a little bit, made it a bit more sparse.
Are you a theory trained player? Like, do you know theory, music theory, or are you a by ear player?
I've never had a lesson in my life.
It's interesting. Some of the best artists are that. They don't know what a quarter note is or a dotted half note. They just go and do it, right? I think that's so cool.
I'm over the years, because I'm doing sessions and so forth, I've learned reading charts and stuff like chord charts aren't a problem, and obviously the odd dot here and there. But to put all that, we call it fly shit here in Australia, to put all that fly shit in front of you and read it from 30 paces, no,
it's noise, right?
There's a bunch of and in Adelaide, there's a couple of guys here, some really, really good bassists that can read fly shit at 30 paces and read it like we're talking as we are now. But no, I certainly wasn't like that.
Yeah.
But I never got booked for sessions and documentaries and movies. I never got booked for put a chart in front of me, let's press record. I used to get booked for those for my feel, and I said a few notes here, a few bits of fly shit here or there, no problem. But I think most of the time, I look at someone like Lewis Johnson, did all those massive Quincy Jones sessions, can't read. He can't read chord charts whilst he was alive. And the Pino Palladinos of this world, that monster players, I don't read. But you don't get booked for your ability to read on those kind of jobs.
Sometimes we have to rely on our good looks, Con. You know what I mean?
Oh, but how I wish I did have a lot more theory and be like the Nathan Easts and the Lee Sklars of this world that can read well and play well and do everything well.
Yep.
But again, that gets back to that's their lane. They're the kings. That's why they are at the top of the mountain.
Yes, I agree. Well, I know you've had many great players that have come in and out. Like, it's been a little bit of a revolving door for the project. They've been...
That's intentional, though.
Of course it is. But are there several artists that you consider core members of HSCC?
Yeah. Pretty much what you see on the videos at the moment, but the main core guys, which I'd say they are it, would be, Brad Pillane on drums, Dave Ross on keyboards, Jake Milich, my guitar player, his wife, Kat, the singer. She's world class, mate. She's just unbelievable. Literally, to be in the room when she sings, when we're rehearsing for the tours or when we're recording, she's just ridiculously good. And then obviously Danny, the older statesman of the band with me, Danny Lopresto, and Jordan, and probably my saxophonist Jason McMahon. They're the core guys, but wherever possible, we like to go out with our horn section.
Yeah.
In principle, that's the core group.
You've kind of answered this, but is it always you who ultimately decides what songs you're going to do? Do you not solicit any input from maybe, quote unquote, some of these core members, or do you just go in one morning or one afternoon and say, this is the one, get prepared? Is that kind of how it goes down?
When you're running a show, or sometimes in these sessions, Randy, there's a horn section, a percussionist, who we use by the name of Steve Todd, who's just the most wonderful man, and a couple of guitar players on some tracks, some backing vocalists. If one person doesn't call the shots, it's just chaos. So that's endemic of how I pick my tunes. If I let everyone pick their tunes, whilst they may love the tune, whilst they may think they do a great job on the tune, it isn't necessarily a tune that is remaining true to the lane that we're in. So I always listen. Of course, it costs nothing to listen, and I respect my guys immensely. Mm-hmm. But I've got the next, and I've always had, even since day one, I've got a master list of songs that are still another 150 to go, and I'm adding to them all the time.
Of course.
So as we go down, we pick them, we do them, and I pick them, and that's what it is. Some of the guys have made some suggestions on songs, which I never thought I would do. And I thought, okay, it's on the list, but it was way back. I thought, let's give it a go. And I've done them, and they've worked. Some work, some don't. But having said that, we're blessed, Randy. Like, if a song for us doesn't work, that's like 250,000 views. Most people would be screaming to get 250,000 views on something.
Right. That
gives you an indication of how blessed we all are.
Yes. Well, I have to say that horn section, we talked about Motown, and, the horns are very much a part of that Motown sound. And when I listened to, I think it was the song you guys did, was it Silly Love Songs by Wings?
Yeah.
Oh, shit. Those horns Randy, sounded so good, man.
That was the same day that we recorded Something Happened on the Way to Heaven as well. whenever they've got the horn section, I'll record, say, 2 or 3 tunes that have got the horn. Sam Eads is he runs our horn section he plays trumpet along with Luke White. Man, when those guys are in the zone, and it's a lot of times horn players as a section, they fart their notes or they're not tight. And, there's one thing I can't handle is a sloppy horn section. And that's because I've grown up listening to Quincy Jones's horn section.
Yes.
Jerry Hay, Gary Grant, Bill Rickenbach, Larry Williams. That's a horn section. So I'm really critical on those guys, but they're so good. And you know what, man? Funny as shit. So funny to be out on the road with. They're just good guys.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you, sometime back, actually early on when I started the show, I did an interview with a guy that was a friend of a friend, basically, a great musician. And he just happened to know Steve Howard, who played horn in Wings with Paul McCartney. And he lived up in the Dallas area where Michael Lane Hildebrandt lived. And I said, man, I am a huge Wings fan. I just love Wings. I said, do you think there's any way that I could ever get you to call Steve Howard and have him? I mean, he was on 74, 75, 76 Wings tour, right? Played on all of those records. And I talked to Steve several times on the phone. He was like so excited to do my show. Absolutely. Let's set it up, blah, blah, blah. And then one day out of the clear blue, he said, Randy, I'm not going to be able to do the show. And I said, okay, no worries. We'll reschedule. And then I never heard back from him, and I never had closure. And I usually don't share that story, but it was kind of odd. So hopefully Steve resurfaces. But like when I heard you guys do the whole Wings thing, it was like, wow. And you did it spot on. I mean, congrats and kudos to that. That's some of the stuff that formed me as a musician back in the day. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Silly Love Songs. We that actually, out of the 300 songs that we've got to pick from, Randy, that actually makes the live show. And we do a medley of Live and Let Die and into that one.
Yeah. Wow. Good stuff.
So yeah, we're pretty lucky, man.
Yeah. What has the YouTube popularity done for HSCC as it relates to booking shows for the band? I mean, from the guy that sits over here and kind of look as the outsider looking in, and I book all of my own shows and that type of thing. So I'm kind of in that business with you, but I have to think that had to have opened so many doors for you guys to go in and play, at some of the prime spots. Would you agree or disagree with that?
Definitely in Australia, we're about to embark on another tour in April, another, I think, 2.5 month tour. Then we got some other stuff, and then we do the rest of the country and a repeat of the country in September. But it's got to the point now where I used to book everything and take care of everything, book the rooms, and it was a logistical nightmare. Mm-hmm. Like, it's exhausting. It really is. I get it. Dealing with, 14 flights and then hotel rooms and hire cars and backline and sound guys and then, ticket sales and marketing. It was just, it's got to the point now where it's become too big, and of course I watch it, but I don't do it anymore like I used to, but I'm still watching over the books as you have to. Mm-hmm. But we've done some private shows. We couldn't take any photographs because they were high-end events and stuff, but we've been flown all around the world to do one-nighters, It's just a beautiful, not that long ago, we were flown to the south of Italy, to do this event, and Asia, and I'm getting calls now from all over the world to do this kind of stuff. But you know what it is, Randy? It's really good, and I'm so grateful to wake up in the morning these days. And I'm not a prolific sleeper at the best of times, but the phone's pinging all night. And there's, are you interested in doing this? Are you interested in doing that? Like, it's so encouraging and such a blessing to be relevant again when I'm pushing 60. So, all of a sudden I'm dealing with things that I would have given my left leg to do in my early 20s, to be being recognized by a lot of the people that I've played on these original songs, or the artists themselves, or, it's hard to explain, and no one could have ever told me as recently as 3 or 4 years ago this would morph into what it's become.
Do you ever look back and say, man, why didn't these calls come 30 years ago when I was a young stud and have the energy to get out and just go to all hours of the night. You know what I mean? Like,
it's funny because we finish a gig, Randy. Some of the gigs we've done are big gigs. We're back at the hotel.
Oh, I get it. No partying, no nothing. Right? I totally get it.
Oh no, not interested. You know, we get to meet some wonderful people, some really influential people, and all of that. But we're all back. You know, we're back at the hotel resting.
Totally understand. I totally understand. If you're anything like me, I'm a wake up early kind of guy. I'm not a night owl. I'll be up in the studio editing, doing stuff for my podcast at 4:30, 5 o'clock on a Saturday morning. That's when I'm fresh. That's odd for a musician because most musicians are creatures of the night, right? They're up all night.
But isn't it great to wake up, like you say, at 4:35 in the morning and come down and be just so enthused, hit what you're calling work, you know, getting the podcast and even what we're doing with this chat. It's fantastic.
Absolutely. It is. It really is. What about plans to come to the U.S. specifically? Is there anything lined out for you guys right now for some dates in the U.S.?
Just prior to COVID really taking a foothold, paperwork had been signed for a residency in Vegas. It was signed and done. And then the promoter there, rightly so, was concerned with COVID and ticket sales, and it was the right decision. So now what's happened is we're now in negotiations with a couple of promoters up there to look after us through North America, Canada, and South America. So that's not in its early stages, probably a bit more than that. But that at the moment for us is probably one of our main focuses to get up there because that's the majority of our market.
Yeah.
And I don't exaggerate, Randy. I get 20, 30 messages a day. When are we coming to America? When are we coming to America? So a couple of promoters that have been privy to all that information, I think their attitude is we're a product enough that even if we only did, say, initially 4 or 5 shows in America and spread it from coast to coast, people will travel for the show.
Well, that's a great problem to have, you know, where you're getting 20, 30 pings a day. Well, you spoke a little earlier about a Shure endorsement. I think you picked that one up along the way. Talk to the listeners a little bit about the endorsements that HSCC has, not just Shure, but I think there might be some other ones as well, correct?
Yes, there are, yeah. Primarily Shure came on and gave us so much stuff. Like it's hard. I had to go and buy cases for it, Randy. Like every conceivable recording mic, you know, from the SM7s to the 58s to the drum pack mics, all the guitar mics, condensers, everything, so that when we record, we're giving the best possible, you know, output of sound. And in terms of Shure themselves, they get quite a bit of mileage because most people now are buying products to record at home. We've been great for them, and they've been great for us, and they've been so good to us, and especially with all their in-ear monitoring. It's just world-class stuff. Then I initially got endorsed by Laney Amplifiers over in England with all their new range of gear, and as a result, I'm one of their artists. And then Jake and Danny now are both with Laney, so whenever we hit the road or we record, it's all Laney gear.
Okay.
For amplifiers. And then our keyboard players just finished signing up a big Roland endorsement. So nice. They gave us half a dozen of their latest keyboards, just world-class stuff. And their electronic drums, the Roland electronic drums are frightening. They actually look like a real kit. They've got the shells and everything, and you can get any sound you want out of them. They're our principal endorsees, artists and so forth. But there's just talk at the moment. There's a couple of companies looking at having some brand placement with us as well, you know, to promote their product. Because we cater to that, you know, 45, 50 up to 70. That's our sweet spot of demographic. And those people drive nice cars or have more disposable income because the kids are gone. And, you know, there's alcohol companies, red wine or lifestyle companies. So I think 2024 is already in the first 2 weeks. It's just been huge with what's happened just in the first 2 weeks. And I think it's that whole plant, you know, seed and cultivate. And I think it's getting to that point where, when I say getting to that point, it's getting to a point where it's now becoming increasingly out of my hands, Randy.
Yeah.
And I've got to let the big boys come in and do what they do.
Too big for your britches now, aren't you?
Oh, man, I tell you, just when you think you know something, there's someone that knows a whole lot more.
Oh, yeah, 100%. 100%. Well, it's nice to have the manufacturers back you guys like that and believe in what talent you're bringing to the table. I'm a big, I don't have a sponsorship or an endorsement, but I'm a big Shure in-ear monitor guy. I use the SE535s. I love those monitors, and for sure the PSM 300, I use that, and that's what I use in my duo shows these days, but have always been a big Shure fan. Specifically they make a world-class product for sure.
Podcast continues to grow, they'll come a knocking.
For sure. Con, what comes to mind? Because there's people that have coined this of you guys, and you seem like a really humble guy, and I don't know how you think about when people say this about you or the project, but what comes to your mind when you get dubbed the greatest cover band in the world? I'm sure that you've heard this at some point in time, right? When somebody says, hey, I heard that you guys were the greatest cover band in the world or of all time, or whatever they're coining, what does that mean to you as a performer and what appears to be a pretty humble guy, right? What does it mean to you?
Well, one, at our core, we are exactly that. We are a cover band. Yes, we reimagine them and do rearrangements of the songs, but we are a cover band. So if you are going to be a cover band, then own that you're a cover band. I am a cover band. Are we the world's best cover band? I don't believe so, because there's a lot of, like I said earlier, just when you think you know something, there's someone better than you. We are a good cover band, and I guess 500 million views can't be all wrong, in the respect that they keep on coming back, and more than 1 million subscribers if you add up all our social media platforms. And I would argue that to some people, the greatest basketballer in history is Michael Jordan. Mm-hmm. But there's just as many people that saying someone else is better. It's all subjective.
Of course.
If people want to call me that, you can call me that. If you want to call me humble or you want to call me arrogant, you can call me both of those. I'm not going to lose any sleep either way.
Sure.
What anyone thinks of HSCC or me, that's their business. That's not mine. And I respect that that's your opinion. But at the end of the day, you cannot please everybody.
Never. And I'm sure you've heard the old saying, you can call me arrogant, you can call me whatever you want.
For dinner.
Don't you dare call me late for dinner. See, you've been around the block, man. You've done your homework.
The boss, they say, we got to get to Texas. And I said, I know why. And they say, why? They say, just to eat some barbecue ribs.
Ribs. That's right.
It'll be a tour in Texas, like a great meal in Texas, rudely interrupted by a show.
Yeah, exactly. Well, listen, I have to think that by doing such great covers, this has been, these things have been seen by younger people, and this has opened up, a whole new fan base for you guys. And I think it's really, I guess these songs are being heard by a younger generation now because you guys are so popular on YouTube, and YouTube it's an old person's platform, but it's a lot of young people out there, and they're hearing you guys do these songs. And I have to think that it's opening up a whole new audience for these songs that you and I grew up loving. Do you think there's any truth to that assumption?
That is 100% true, because we're noticing at our live shows, parents are coming with their kids, and that is so cool for me. When as a 19 or 20, 22-year-old that you're going out with your parents and you're both enjoying the same show, it is so heartwarming, so heartwarming. And a lot of young kids are getting turned on to HSCC and these covers because they're listening to their parents play it in the car or at home, and they're going, what's this? And they say, what do you mean, what's this? This is what we grew up with. And a lot of the younger kids are realising that the best, I say it in my monologue in part of the show, Randy, I say, the best new music is old music.
I agree with you there. Well, even my kids, if you ask my kids, who are all grown adults now, who are the greatest songwriters on the planet, the first thing that would probably come out of their mouth are the brothers Gibb. right? And that's the group, and that's the group that I listen to in the house, and I think are the most magnificent songwriters on the planet Earth. And they would agree with that, and it's all because I instilled that in them. So when these young kids come to your shows with their parents, you have to think that their parents did a due diligence of instilling this great music into their ears as a young kid, right? What better gift is that? Monetary gifts and toys absolutely. And all that is great. It's shit, but man, putting that music that lasts a lifetime in the ears of a kid, man, there's no greater gift on the planet as far as I'm concerned. And you could argue, not you, but people can argue that with me until they're blue in the face. And
I agree.
It's undisputable.
Even when it's funny you mentioned the Brothers Gibb, like a couple of weeks ago when we released Too Much Heaven, it just went mental. It just went crazy.
Yep.
I mean, we did 500,000 views in the first, I think, 3 or 4 days. Mm-hmm. And of course, like anything, it slows down. But I put it on a Facebook on a reel, like just a 90-second grab. And in the space of, I think, 6 days, it had done 1.3 million views. And there's a reason for that. It's because it's a great song.
Probably, Con, hands down, one of the best songs that they ever wrote, in my opinion. Like, and you guys said you did such due diligence to that song. It was, those guys, Barry with that falsetto voice, they're not an easy band to cover by any stretch, but you guys did such a nice job on that. Kudos on that performance.
And there. When we recorded that, Randy, it was so quick. We did it in 2 takes, and we just knew there was no point in doing any more to try and make it better or try and clean it. It just had something about it. And in the video, there's sections in it where I'm smiling my ass off.
Yeah.
When we're hitting certain little accents and little anticipations, because it just that particular track just took over. It had its own energy, and even though I'm out there, directing it all, it called all the shots, and it basically said, play the song, sing the song, and just leave it alone.
Yeah.
And it's exactly what we did, and let it take its course.
Isn't it? You said you smiled at some of the accents of the song, which a lot of listeners of music would never. First of all, they probably don't know what you're even referring to, but I know exactly what you're talking about because it's pieces, it's small tidbits in a song that are not the song if they're left out. And if you think about the Bee Gees and Barry Gibb, it's the, nobody, it's certain things that have to be in that song to make them like the original. So I know exactly.
And also the length of the notes, the length of everything. Yeah, it's a lot. It's quite a science in that respect.
Well, wonderful job. And I know that you're the head Indian there calling all the shots on what songs are done. But if I have any input, man, you guys have to do some more Bee Gees somewhere down the line, right? There's got to be another song in there by you guys with the Bee Gees for sure. Are there any plans to ever press any of this material onto a format like a CD or vinyl? Has that ever crossed your mind at all?
We're on Spotify like everybody else, but we're in the process now of picking our best. And that's a really hard call to do that too, Randy, with that many songs. But we're looking at probably getting I shouldn't say our, it's not fair for the guys. I'm probably going to pick our best, what I consider the best stuff that we've done, and doing an album of that on vinyl. And that would be a limited release, maybe 500 copies or something like that, and we'll ship, but definitely on album. But I want to go full old school. The album with the liner notes, photographs, who played on what, who produced what. I want to make it like an old school where you take out the sleeve and you read it, and it was an experience for us growing up. The liner notes were just as important as the vinyl.
Man, you're hitting the nail right on the head here. A year and a half ago, I said I had I don't know what relationship he would be to me, but he came in and was collecting vinyl, and he just talked about it a lot, and it kind of created this interest like, I wound up going out and buying a turntable and starting a vinyl collection. And Con, I can remember the first piece of vinyl that I bought in forever. Like, the last time I listened to vinyl, I was a kid, right? And I remember busting the wrapper on this piece of vinyl and sliding it out of that sleeve. And I got the hair on the back of my neck, man, I'm telling you, it stood up.
Yeah.
Because it's an experience to pull it out and, oh my God, read the liner notes. I would read the liner notes before I even put the stuff on the turntable over there, right? That was just as important to me as the music
Randy,
that was
also,
coming out of there, man. Like, oh.
And that's great. I'll tell you why. Because you loved music, even when it's not like now you press a button on your phone or your screen and the song comes up. You took out that black piece of vinyl with care. You held it on the edges so you wouldn't put a finger mark on it. It was a ritual in the sense of there was a process. You took it out of the plastic. You didn't want to dent the cover or crease it. Out came the track. And if you were really lucky, you had them in plastic inside its own white case inside of it. And then you opened up and out came the notes. Oh, it was an experience.
I don't know if you remember a band called White Lion from the 80s. I had Mike Tramp, the lead singer of that band, on my show, and we talked about the very thing. It was magical to sit down on a Saturday morning with a cup of coffee and just pull a record out and, like you said, grab the edges and put it on and then kick back with your coffee and listen. It was an experience to listen to the music. It wasn't just noise in the background like Spotify. You can queue up a bunch of shit on Spotify and listen and you're not paying any attention. But man, when you put a record on the turntable, you are inside of the songs, or you should be inside the songs at that point.
And how about the warmth, warmth of sound of vinyl? You put the needle on it, and and on it goes, and the warmth. Yeah. Everything sounds fat and rich and lush.
I throw it on that turntable right there and pipe it through that EV50 right there. And gosh dang it, it sounds amazing.
Yeah, well, so that's the plan. I mean, the only problem is we'll do it. We'll do an album and all that entails. The only problem is that you're just never gonna, like I said earlier, with so many songs. The ones that I pick, I've even contemplated doing HSCC the rock tunes or HSCC ballads or HSCC soul or whatever. But I think I'm just going to do just ones that I know have got a good cross section of appeal and do just the one album, and we'll sign it for people, and
that would be so cool. Well, I hope that I hope that somehow I get notified on that, because I want to be in that line, man. I want to be in that line, Con. Don't forget about me. What, in your opinion, Con? What makes a good cover band, in your opinion?
The right people for the right song. That they not just sing the song, but that they dig the song, that they like the song, and they come there with an open heart. And the musicians play the song, not their instrument. That's where HSCC is blessed.
Yes.
All my players, my drummer doesn't come and play the drums on the track. He plays the song.
He serves the song. They call it serving the song. That's what they say here.
Yeah, and serving the song is an excellent analogy. But also just, what am I looking for? It's not obedience, but it's being respectful to the person that wrote the song or the person that performed the song. The reason we're covering it is because it was a good song.
I agree. I don't know about Australia, but here in the United States, there is this tribute bandwagon that people are jumping on, and they're hugely popular, probably more so than cover bands, right? Because they specialize in an artist, if you will, like it's an Ozzy Osbourne tribute band or a Bee Gees tribute band, and they've honed that craft around that particular artist. If Hindley Street Country Club became a tribute band, who do you think the tribute band would be? Who do you think, of all of the artists that you've done or all of the artists that you'll do, who do you think you guys would serve the best, right, as a tribute act?
I would just never go down that road, Randy.
Okay.
That would just never. There's too much that we do that we've paid our respects to then define it into one. I mean, if I had $1 for every Fleetwood Mac tribute band, every Queen tribute band, they get all a bit, it's not that they become tiresome, because that's not the right answer. But back in the day when tribute bands first came out, there was one or two, but now they become so weekend warrior-ish, a lot of them, that they don't give the due respect to the bands that they're supposedly paying tribute to.
Sure.
To me, that's only my opinion, though.
Yeah. I guess if I
Having said that,
rephrase that question, Con, I don't think that you would ever sell out on what you do well, but I didn't know if there was an artist that you feel like you guys do better than any other, right? Is there one that comes to mind?
Oh, that's a big call. Wow. I think we'd certainly, we'd be good at doing, maybe a Boss Gags / Toto / that kind of doobie kind of thing. Again, gets back to that era of that 1978 to 84, that yacht rock period.
Yes.
I think we'd be all right at that.
Yeah. What can you share with the listeners as it relates to the upcoming shows or upcoming tours in and around Adelaide or Australia or even outside that are on the books that you guys will be getting out and doing?
It's all killer and no filler.
Okay. Where can the listeners find you guys on social media?
They can get us on, obviously, YouTube at the Hindley Street Country Club. They can get us again on that on Instagram. They can get us on that on Spotify, on Facebook, and otherwise they can go to our website, and that's continually getting updated with new dates and content. That's just www.thehscc.com.
Well, Con, listen, this has been a super cool treat for me. I really appreciate you quickly responding to my request to chat. This just went down a couple of days ago. So thank you for that. From my end, you never know what you're going to get from each artist, but you've certainly been responsive, which is a treat to me. And this makes my life so much easier. So thank you for that. Also, I wish you and all the artists nothing but success now and in the near future with all of the HSCC endeavors. So I wish you the best there.
Thank you, my friend, and to all your listeners, and to the time that you put into your podcast. People do listen and people do care, even when you think that they don't, my friend. And persistence beats resistance.
Yes, I agree. Well, for the listeners, I ask you guys to like, share, and subscribe to the podcast on Facebook at Backstage Pass Radio Podcast, on Instagram at Backstage Pass Radio, and on the website at backstagepassradio.com. You guys take care of yourselves and each other, and we will see you right back here on the next episode of Backstage Pass Radio.
Thanks so much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed today's episode of Backstage Pass Radio. Make sure to follow Randy on Facebook and Instagram at Randy Halsey Music and on Twitter at @RHalseyMusic. Also, make sure to like, subscribe, and turn on alerts for upcoming podcasts. If you enjoyed the podcast, make sure to share the link with a friend and tell them Backstage Pass Radio is the best show on the web for everything music. We'll see you next time right here on Backstage Pass Radio.